I'm Gina Sharif. I'm co-hosting Stay in Control. In this episode, we'll be talking about vaping and how to prevent or stop addiction. Doctor, can you please summarize for us the previous episode?
Thank you, Gina. Yes, I will. The previous episodes, we tried to explain marijuana is not a good plant, although it is a plant, but it's not good. It does affect the body and the brain. For examples, people that smoke marijuana, they have asthma, they have lung disease. That's part of the body. It can increase the heart rate. It can increase the blood pressure. And recently, because of the high concentration of THC, which is tetrahydrocannabinoid, in concentration as the psychoactive substance in the marijuana, we start seeing a very new syndrome or a new presentation who smokes marijuana. It's called marijuana hyperemesis syndrome. And what it is when they smoke a lot of marijuana, they continue to vomit, and vomiting after vomiting after vomiting. And most of the time we have to admit them to the hospital because we cannot control their vomiting. And they need hydration, they need IVs, so we can hydrate them because they can't eat. These things, that syndrome usually stays about 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, but the average is about 48 hours. This patient needs treatment. We cannot tell him this is gonna go away. It's not gonna go away. The patient will become very dehydrated and become unable to eat, and they go into a shock. So we have to treat them. One of the new syndromes that we have seen with higher concentration of marijuana. Also, as again, I want to say again that the developing brain needs a lot of connections to the different parts of the brain. With the use of marijuana, these becomes interrupted and the connections become interrupted. In addition, the memory gets affected. So in a bad way, not in a good way. So at the end, the person who uses marijuana early have no chances of getting his full potentials for his academic activities. For example, they are very, very difficult to pass high school because they cannot comprehend. Also, some other jobs for now, for like the police, I'm talking about the United States, the police, they start getting those cadets or the prospective police officers way early in the high school, and they give them a program after a program after a program. They drug test them in the age about 14 to 15. And if anybody wants to join the police, he's done. They're not going to allow him to go in. People think that, okay, if I use marijuana now, I'll be safe in 2 weeks for urine drug screen. The answer is no. Answer is 4 to 6 weeks. It stays in the body. One smoke, one joint, causes the urine to stay positive for marijuana for 4 to 6 weeks. Just one joint, one smoke. So if it affects the body and it stays in the urine for 4 to 6 weeks, what about the poor brain? Just one joint affects the brain for 4 to 6 weeks. So that brain is not functioning right. So it's very, very detrimental to the health. Very, very detrimental. So marijuana is not to be taken lightly. it destroys the youth completely.
How about vaping? Some people suppose that vaping is much more safer than smoking and it's okay to vape.
Thank you, Gina, for that question, because now it's a trend. And people started to use this vaping as a new vice, okay? And first they say, well, there's nothing in it. It's just a flavor of apple or flavor of mint or flavor or whatever. So there's nothing in it, okay? This is a very dangerous step because the next step is they're gonna put nicotine into it. And with peer pressure and also trying to, this becomes a habit. When they smoke it, there is no happiness about it. There's no pleasure. What's the pleasure? So let me put a little nicotine because they say nicotine is very stimulant to the brain. So I'll use nicotine. On the other side, there is a joint task force that's in the United States. Joint task force between the two federal entities trying to affect and to see the effect of vaping. And it came out to be that they are very cautioning about vaping because a lot of people get sick, especially young people get pulmonary diseases, lung diseases secondary to vaping. And they are looking maybe at the flavors, but we don't know yet. So vaping is very, very dangerous for two reasons. First, it affects the lungs. And the second thing, it is an introduction to nicotine because they're gonna smoke it for a month and then now they want to look at something because this is not fun. Now I wanna put nicotine. He is already or she is already used to put something in there, so it's easy to add the nicotine. Now, compared to the cigarettes, okay? Cigarettes, do you know that it has tar? You know what tar is?
No.
The black on top of the streets, that's what tar is. So the cigarettes have tar. Why? Because otherwise it would not stay lit. Okay? If you see the difference between cigar and a cigarette is you light it once and you leave it and it will stay lit. Stay lit because of all the hydrocarbons in it. There's 365 compounds in one cigarette. But the main thing is a tar. And the tar is the black tar on the streets. So can you imagine doing this and smoking it?
It's very dangerous.
The lungs, when we take forensic examination of the lungs after a smoker, it's filled with these tar things. They look black because of all the tar that gets there. So vaping is not good. And we're gonna be recommending against it. Okay? People, they say they do it anyway. They don't ask the doctors, is that good or bad? But they say, I'm gonna do it anyway. Okay? They're gonna end up being on a cigarette. And if you listen to our episodes in the past, cigarettes will start the addiction. People that uses marijuana, they must have used cigarettes before. Most of them. So we're going into a sliding. We started the ball rolling, and it's gonna roll very quickly after that. So we are recommending against vaping. It's a nice thing, it's a new thing. But who said that every new thing is a good thing? So we don't want that. We recommend against it. And the parents should not let their children vape.
So what are the different type of addictions that cannot be related to drugs?
Oh, the addiction is not just related to drugs alone. The addiction can be in so many cases. One is work addiction. Again, I want to go back to what the definition of addiction. Addiction is doing something psychoactive or doing something it can cause psychological, psychosocial, and legal consequences. And the person cannot stop. This is the definition of addiction. So we can take that addiction to a different level. For example, work addiction. He's gonna, or he or she, so concentrating on their work and they ignore the other aspect of life. So if he has a family or she has a family, will be concentrating more on addiction, more on their work, okay? But they're neglecting their children, for example. Neglecting the family as a whole. And there always has to be a consequences. For example, I wanted people to understand. For example, if I have a family, okay, and my dad, God forbid, got sick, so I have to go and take care of my dad, okay? This is type of an emergency situation. I can stay with him or her 2 days, 3 days, but I have to go back to my family. The problem is when there is a consequences that it starts to happen. My children start failing because I'm not following them. My wife is getting upset because I'm always outside the home. Okay? This can cause a lot of stress. So addiction always has consequences. So if I have, for example, if I drink a beer, that's not addiction. It doesn't cause any problems. But how would I know that I'll be going down the stream and making more drinks? I don't know that, and nobody knows. So the best thing is not to do it, not to vape. We're going back to the other parts of addiction. There is also pornography addiction. There is also sexual addiction. They are two different. And sexual addiction is not what we understand. Again, consequences. I have to see in somebody's behavior, what is the consequences, okay? Yeah. So, for example, the people that have sexual behavior, okay, they can expose themselves in front of the people, okay? There's consequences to it. They can do certain things or talk about certain things. And that pedophile comes in that part too. They cannot stop hurting people. And that's where the addiction starts.
Talking of pedophile, is it considered as a type of addiction?
Okay, pedophile, they have 2 different or 3 different categories. One, first of all, it's a behavior abnormality and it has consequences. Done. Okay? But there is type of people one can do it one time and they feel so bad about it and they stop doing it. If they do it more than once, it is a habit and it is a disease. Take advantage of young or infants or toddlers or young adults. And it is punishable to the extreme by laws. In the United States, if they are labeled and they're convicted of a pedophile, you know what the consequences are? They're gonna be always labeled as pedophile. Even if they go to prison for 7 years or 10 years, when they come in, they have to register as a sexual offender. That means he cannot go to church because church has kids, so he cannot go. Okay, every time he moves, okay, he has to inform people that he is a registered sexual offender. They cannot have any children near him. He cannot sit with his own grandparents, grandchildren. He cannot. So it is punishable by the extreme. I'm talking about United States because that's my experience. But I don't know what other countries do, but I'm sure other countries has the same laws. That it's extreme problem. If you labeled as pedophile, or they usually don't say that, they usually say it's a sexual offender. And that will be labeled for the rest of his life or her life. So it is a grave problem. Pornography also can destroy families.
So how can you prevent or stop addiction?
Okay, I think this will be a good for next episode because really it is long. And we have to really stress on it because it's a very, very important subject. So thank you, Gina, for this episode, and we'll meet again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please stay tuned for the next episode as we will be discussing a very important subject. We will be talking about how to prevent or stop addiction. Thank you.